The day I drove a car again after my stroke was one of those moments that looked ordinary from the outside. It was just a car, 4 wheels, a steering wheel, a seat, a road. But for me, getting behind that wheel represented something much bigger. It represented independence. It represented freedom. And more than anything, it represented the possibility that maybe my life wasn't over. Before my stroke, driving was something I never really thought about. I got into my car, started the engine, put it in gear, and went wherever I needed to go. Work, the grocery store, appointments, friends, family. I never stopped to think about how complicated driving actually was. You have to see the road. You have to move your hands. You have to control your feet. You have to judge distance. You have to react quickly. You have to remember where you're going. And all of those things have to happen almost automatically. But after a stroke, the things you once did without thinking can suddenly become some of the hardest things you've ever attempted. For me, driving again wasn't simply about getting from one place to another. It was about getting a piece of my old life back. After the stroke, so much of my world had changed. Things I once considered normal suddenly became challenges. Walking could be difficult. Moving could be difficult. Using my body the way I used to could be difficult. And somewhere in the middle of all that uncertainty, there was one question that kept coming back to me. Would I ever drive again? I didn't know the answer. And honestly, there were moments when I was afraid the answer would be no. The hardest part wasn't just the physical recovery, it was the mental battle. When you've been independent for most of your life, needing help can be incredibly humbling. You don't want somebody else driving you everywhere. You don't want to depend on someone just to go to the store. You don't want to ask somebody to take you to an appointment. You want to be able to get in your own car and go. That freedom means something. But after my stroke, I had to accept that I couldn't simply jump into a car and pretend nothing had happened. I had to recover first. I had to learn what my body could do. I had to understand what had changed. And I had to be honest with myself about what was safe. Because driving isn't a game. A mistake behind the wheel doesn't just affect you. It can affect everyone around you. So I knew that wanting to drive again wasn't enough. I had to earn that opportunity. There were days when recovery felt painfully slow. You work hard, you make progress, then you have a bad day. You think you're moving forward, and suddenly you feel like you've taken 3 steps backward. That's one of the things people don't always understand about recovery. It's not always a straight line. Some days you're encouraged, some days you're frustrated, some days you wonder whether all the hard work is actually making a difference. But even when progress was slow, I kept reminding myself of something. Slow progress is still progress. Every little improvement mattered. Every step mattered. Every movement mattered. Every time I pushed myself a little farther, I was building towards something. And eventually, that something was getting back behind the wheel. I remember thinking about all the things I used to take for granted. I never celebrated getting into my car before. I never thought, wow, I'm lucky that I can do this. I just did it. That changed after the stroke. When you've lost something, even temporarily, you begin to appreciate it differently when you get it back. A simple car ride can suddenly feel like a victory. But before that victory could happen, there were questions I had to answer. Could I control the steering wheel? Could I move my legs quickly enough? Could I react if something unexpected happened? Could I concentrate? Could I judge traffic correctly? Could I make decisions under pressure? Could I handle all of those things at the same time? These weren't small questions. They were serious questions. And I had to be honest, because wanting my freedom back couldn't come at the cost of somebody else's safety. So the process wasn't about proving that I was tough. It was about proving that I was ready. There is a huge difference. Sometimes people think recovery means forcing yourself to do something before you're ready. I don't believe that. Recovery means working toward your goals responsibly. It means listening to your doctors and therapists. It means understanding your limitations. It means knowing when to push and when to stop. And sometimes, it means being patient. Patience was one of the hardest lessons for me. I wanted things to happen immediately. I wanted my old life back. I wanted to wake up one morning and feel completely normal. But recovery doesn't work like that. You can't demand that your body heal on your schedule. You have to work with it. You have to keep showing up. You have to keep fighting. And you have to believe that the work you're doing today can create a better tomorrow. Eventually, the idea of driving stopped being just a dream. It became a goal. And having a goal gave me something to work toward. Every exercise, every therapy session, every difficult day, every frustrating moment. They all became part of the journey. I started imagining what it would feel like to sit in the driver's seat again. I imagined putting my hands on the steering wheel. I imagined starting the engine. I imagined pulling out of the driveway. I imagined driving down the road. And I imagined that feeling of realizing, I'm doing it. But, even when you imagine something 1,000 times, the real moment is different. The first time I seriously considered getting back behind the wheel, I had a mixture of emotions. Excitement, fear, nervousness, hope, all of them were there at the same time. Part of me wanted to get in and go. Another part of me knew that I had to respect what had happened to my body. The stroke had changed me. Pretending it hadn't would have been foolish. So, I had to find the balance between confidence and caution. That balance is important for anyone recovering from a major health event. You don't want to live your entire life afraid of what might happen. But you also don't want to ignore reality. There is a difference between fear and wisdom. Fear says, don't ever try again. Wisdom says, make sure you're ready before you try. I wanted wisdom, and then came the moment. I sat down in the driver's seat. I looked around. Everything looked familiar. The dashboard, the steering wheel, the mirrors, the pedals. But somehow, everything felt different. I had sat in that seat countless times before. This time, I wasn't just sitting there. I was returning to something I thought I might have lost forever. I took a breath. I reminded myself of everything I had already overcome. The hospital, the therapy, the difficult days. The frustration, the uncertainty. The countless moments when I had to tell myself not to quit. And then I started the car. That sound alone meant something to me. The engine came to life. And suddenly, this wasn't a dream anymore. This was real. I had to focus. I had to pay attention to everything. The road, the steering, the movement of the car. My surroundings, every little thing mattered. But as I moved forward, something happened. I realized I was doing it. I was driving. Not perfectly, not without nerves, but I was moving. And for that moment, I didn't care about perfection. I cared about progress. I remember thinking about how strange life can be. Before the stroke, I could drive without giving it a second thought. After the stroke, driving became one of the biggest milestones of my recovery. The exact same activity had completely different meaning. That first drive wasn't just a trip. It was proof that recovery was possible. Proof that my future could still contain things I had once feared were gone. Proof that I could continue rebuilding my life. And maybe most importantly, it reminded me that independence can come back one piece at a time. But I also learned something else. Getting back behind the wheel didn't mean everything was suddenly fixed. Recovery didn't end that day. There were still challenges. There were still things I had to work on. There were still moments when I felt frustrated. But that first drive changed my mindset. Because once you've accomplished something you once thought was impossible, you start looking at other challenges differently. You start thinking, what else can I do? What else can I rebuild? What else can I overcome? That's the power of one victory. One victory can change the way you see the next challenge. For someone recovering from a stroke, that can be incredibly important. Maybe your goal isn't driving. Maybe your goal is walking across the room. Maybe it's using your hand again. Maybe it's getting dressed without help. Maybe it's cooking a meal. Maybe it's going back to work. Maybe it's simply getting through the day. Whatever your goal is, don't underestimate it. Other people might look at it and say, that's small. But they don't know what it took for you to get there. They don't know the hours of therapy. They don't know the frustration. They don't know the tears. They don't know how many times you wanted to quit. So don't let somebody else decide how important your progress is. You decide. For me, driving again became a symbol. It reminded me that life after a stroke can still contain freedom.